The Wire allows a few characters to escape the lives prepared for them. Cuddy leaves the drug trade and opens his gym. Namond is adopted by Bunny Colvin and begins succeeding in school. Put eventually leaves the corner for an ordinary job. Bubbles reaches recovery and is finally invited upstairs for dinner. Those outcomes matter because they stop the show from claiming that change is impossible. They also reveal how difficult change actually is. Every successful escape requires timing, outside support, personal effort, and an opportunity that many characters never receive. The worst moments in The Wire are therefore larger than the deaths. They arrive when someone sees the trap, tries to move away from it, and discovers that recognition alone provides no protection. I am ranking these moments by how strongly they demonstrate that problem. The most violent scene will not always rank highest. What matters is how clearly each moment shows a character losing the possibility of becoming someone else. Number 8. Wallace returns to the pit. Wallace's death is one of the first times The Wire explains what leaving the game actually requires. He is only 16, yet he has already been given responsibilities that should belong to an adult. He works on a drug corner, cares for several younger children, and lives in a home where food, electricity, and parental supervision are never guaranteed. After helping identify Brandon, Wallace sees what the Barksdale organization does with that information. Brandon is tortured, killed, and left on display outside Wallace's home. Wallace receives part of the reward, but the money cannot remove the body from his memory. He begins using drugs and tells D'Angelo that he wants to leave the game. The police eventually send Wallace to stay with his grandmother in the countryside. For the first time, he is physically removed from Baltimore. The organization cannot easily reach him, and he no longer has to work on the corner. It sounds like an escape. It fails because nobody builds a life for him after removing him from the old one. Wallace becomes bored and isolated. He misses his friends and returns to the pit, believing he can work again and return to the relationships he understands. He does not realize that the organization now sees him as a possible informant. Stringer orders his death. Bodie and Poot are sent to carry it out. The killing is remembered because Wallace begs his friends to stop. The more revealing moment comes earlier, when he returns to Baltimore. The countryside offered safety, but it did not offer belonging, direction, or a replacement for the only community he knew. Wallace is expected to create a completely different identity with almost no help. He is 16, traumatized, and surrounded by younger children who already depend on him. The adults responsible for protecting him become distracted after Kima is shot. Once the urgent police operation changes, Wallace becomes easier to forget. Namond later escapes because Bunny does much more than move him to a safer address. He gives Namond a home, rules, attention, education, and a relationship that continues after the special school program ends. Wallace receives a location. Namond receives a new structure. That difference decides their futures. Wallace's death proves that taking someone off a corner is only the first part of saving them. If nothing meaningful replaces the corner, returning can feel more natural than staying away. By the time Wallace understands how dangerous that return was, Bodie and Poot are standing in front of him with a gun. Number 7, Frank Sabotka walks toward the Greeks. Frank spends the second season trying to save the Baltimore docks. Ships are disappearing, work is becoming less reliable, and the Union no longer has enough political influence to protect its future. Frank turns to smuggling because legal methods have produced very little. He uses money from the Greeks to support the Union and influence politicians. His criminal activity begins as an attempt to preserve legitimate work, although the arrangement quickly grows beyond anything he can control. The Greeks are not interested in the port as a community. They see it as a route. Containers can carry stolen goods, drugs, chemicals, and trafficked women. Frank tries to create rules around the arrangement, telling them that he wants to know if anything alive is being moved through his docks. The discovery of the dead women shows how little control he actually has. By the end of the season, Frank has been arrested, the Union is under investigation, Ziggy is facing a murder charge, and Nick is involved in the drug trade. Frank agrees to cooperate with the police, hoping that one final decision might protect his family. The Greeks learn about his cooperation through their contact inside the FBI. Frank receives an offer to meet. He believes they may be able to help Ziggy by changing testimony or influencing the case. He walks toward the meeting knowing there is danger, but saving his son matters more than protecting himself. His body is pulled from the water the following day. Frank's death ranks here because every possible route has already been compromised. Politics failed to protect the docks. Smuggling brought money while giving the Greeks access to the Union. Cooperation with police was exposed from inside federal law enforcement. Walking away would mean abandoning Ziggy and watching the port continue to die. Nick survives by cooperating and entering witness protection, but even his escape is incomplete. He loses his uncle, his cousin goes to prison, and the economic problem that pushed the family toward crime remains. When Nick reappears during the final season, he is protesting waterfront development that excludes the working port. The location changes. The argument has barely moved. Cuddy provides a useful comparison because he also leaves a criminal world that wants to find him. When Cuddy tells Avon that he no longer has the game in him, Avon accepts the decision and gives him money for the gym. Cuddy's exit succeeds because he discovers a new purpose and receives help while building it. Frank already has a purpose. The docks are his purpose. That is part of the trap. Leaving crime would not save the union, restore the jobs, or protect Ziggy. Frank cannot separate himself from the institution he is trying to preserve, so every attempt to save it pulls him further into the arrangement that kills him. Number 6. D'Angelo is murdered after finally choosing his own life. D'Angelo spends most of the first season moving between guilt and family loyalty. He understands the damage caused by the Barksdale organization, but he also grew up inside it. Avon is his uncle, Brianna is his mother. The organization describes obedience as a responsibility to family, making every attempt to leave look like betrayal. Wallace's death pushes D'Angelo closer to cooperation. He begins speaking to the police and provides useful information, but Brianna convinces him to protect the family. D'Angelo accepts a 20-year sentence, while the people above him receive less time. In prison, he finally stops negotiating with them. During a discussion of The Great Gatsby, D'Angelo explains that a person cannot erase the past by pretending to become someone new. His interpretation also describes his own position. The Barksdale name follows him into prison, along with every decision made on its behalf. D'Angelo tells his mother that he wants to serve his sentence alone. He refuses Avon's protection and withdraws from the family. He is no longer trying to reduce his punishment or trade information. He simply wants the right to decide who he will be inside the years he has left. Stringer sees that independence as a risk. Without Avon's knowledge, Stringer hires someone to arrange D'Angelo's murder. He is strangled in the prison library, and his death is staged to look like suicide. D'Angelo is killed after he has stopped actively threatening the organization. He does not resume cooperation with the police. He does not plan revenge. His refusal to remain emotionally controlled is enough to make Stringer uncomfortable. That is why his death ranks above Frank's. Frank knowingly walks toward a dangerous meeting because he is still trying to influence events. D'Angelo is already in prison and has accepted the legal consequences of his choices. The organization still refuses to release its claim over him. Poot later manages the ordinary exit D'Angelo wanted. After years on the corner and a prison sentence, Poot leaves the game and takes a job at a shoe store. The job is not glamorous, which is exactly why it matters. He accepts a life with less money and status because it keeps him alive. D'Angelo never receives enough distance to make that choice useful. His family can reach him inside prison, and Stringer can arrange his death from outside it. The Barksdale name gives him privileges when he cooperates and becomes a death sentence when he does not. Number 5. Bodie refuses to leave his corner. Bodie begins the series as one of the young dealers working in the pit. He accepts the rules more easily than Wallace and understands that survival requires discipline. He helps kill Wallace because Stringer orders it, even though he hesitates when the gun is finally in his hand. By season 4, almost everyone from Bodie's original world is gone. Wallace is dead. D'Angelo is dead. Stringer is dead. Avon is back in prison. The towers have been demolished, and Marlowe has taken control of the west side. Bodie remains on a corner. His survival initially looks like proof that he understood the game better than his friends. He avoided long prison sentences, learned how to manage younger dealers, and continued earning after the Barksdale organization collapsed. Marlowe's rise reveals the value of that experience. It is almost none. The rules Bodie followed belong to an organization that no longer exists. Marlowe kills people over suspicion, disrespect, and small failures. When little Kevin disappears, Bodie begins recognizing that his loyalty has bought him no protection. He compares the people in the drug trade to pawns who are removed while the leaders remain. McNulty offers him a chance to cooperate. Bodie is unwilling to provide information about the old Barksdale organization, but he considers helping against Marlowe. Before he can do much, Marlowe's people see him entering McNulty's car. The conclusion is immediate. Bodie has to die. Chris and Snoop approach his corner. Poot tells Bodie to leave, but Bodie refuses. He fires back and announces that they will not place him inside one of the vacant houses. O-Dog appears from behind and shoots him. Bodie's final stand can look brave. It is also the final decision of someone who cannot imagine himself anywhere else. Running would mean abandoning the corner he spent years learning to control. Cooperation would violate the code that shaped his identity. Joining Marlowe would require accepting murders he considers senseless. He has enough awareness to understand the system is unfair and no idea how to live outside it. Poot runs from the same ambush and survives. He later leaves the game. That does not make Poot a coward or Bodie a fool. Poot has already participated in Wallace's death and watched the entire Barksdale organization disappear. When the final warning arrives, he accepts that the corner is not worth dying for. Bodie still believes standing his ground means something. His death proves that understanding the game does not provide an escape once the game changes. Bodie follows the rules, survives the war, and gains experience. A younger organization takes over and removes him anyway. The pawn finally sees the board. It does not help him leave it. Number 4, Omar is killed in a convenience store. Omar appears to be one of the few street figures who has created a life outside the normal drug hierarchy. He does not sell drugs, control a corner, or answer to an organization. He robs dealers and lives according to a personal code that forbids targeting ordinary citizens. His independence gives him unusual freedom. Avon, Stringer, Proposition Joe, and Marlowe all have organizations to protect. Omar can disappear, change partners, and attack when the opportunity suits him. His name becomes powerful enough to clear corners before he arrives. For a time, he even leaves Baltimore. After the torture and murder of Butchie, Omar returns to pursue Marlowe. His leg is badly injured after he escapes an ambush by jumping from a balcony, but he continues moving through the city with a makeshift crutch. He attacks Marlowe's corners, destroys drugs and money, and calls for Marlowe to face him directly. Marlowe never gives him that fight. Omar enters a convenience store, notices Kennard, and pays little attention to him. Kennard is a child. Omar has faced trained killers, survived ambushes, and walked openly through neighborhoods where organizations offered money for his death. A child near the counter does not register as the serious threat. Kennard shoots him in the head. The scene removes every part of the ending Omar's reputation seems to promise. There is no duel with Marlowe, no final speech, and no moment where the city's most famous robber is defeated by someone equally respected. He dies while buying cigarettes from a neighborhood shop. The newspaper later removes his murder from its limited space. At the morgue, his identification tag is briefly confused with another body. The city continues without giving the real Omar the ending created by his legend. The street immediately begins inventing a better story. People describe him fighting police or New York gunmen because being killed by a child feels too small for the man they remember. Omar escaped the drug organization's chain of command. He never escaped the culture produced around them. Kennard had previously been seen pretending to be Omar, copying the violence that made Omar famous. The child who admired the legend becomes the person who kills the man. Bubbles offers the strongest comparison. He also spends years moving through Baltimore's drug world without belonging to one organization. He survives through information, small schemes, and relationships with police. His escape begins when he stops treating survival as enough and accepts help from other people. Omar cannot make the same move after Butchie's death. Revenge pulls him back into the identity he created. He has money, distance, and a partner outside Baltimore, yet the unfinished conflict still owns him. The game does not need to defeat Omar through Marlowe. It only needs to produce another child who has learned that killing a famous man can make him important. Number 3. Carver leaves Randy at the group home. Randy's story begins with smaller mistakes than those made by the adults around him. He enjoys making money, participates in school schemes, and passes a message that unknowingly helps arrange Lex's murder. When school officials pressure him over another incident, he provides information because he is frightened of losing his foster home. The adults promise to protect him. Herc handles Randy carelessly and fails to maintain contact with the officer responsible for his safety. Word spreads that Randy has spoken to police. His foster mother's house is firebombed, leaving her seriously injured and removing the only stable home Randy has known. Carver tries to repair the damage. He calls social services, looks for another placement, and eventually offers to foster Randy himself. The system requires months of screening before that can happen. Randy needs somewhere to live immediately. For one night, he sleeps on a bench inside the police station. He even offers Carver his savings, believing money might help secure a safer placement. Carver has to take him to a group home. Randy thanks him for trying. Carver returns to his car and releases all the anger he kept under control in front of the child. Inside the home, Randy finds his money stolen and his bed marked with an insult identifying him as a snitch. The other boys attack him. The scene ranks this high because someone genuinely tries to help and still fails. Carver has authority inside the police department. He has changed since the first season and understands that Randy will be in danger. None of that allows him to bypass a slow placement system. The rules designed to protect children stop him from immediately taking custody, while the system offers no safe solution during the required delay. Randy's position becomes even harder to accept when compared with Namond. Both boys are part of Bunny Colvin's special class. Both are involved in the street culture around them. Namond pretends to be tougher than he is and struggles under the expectations attached to Weebay's name. Bunny recognizes that Namond is unsuited for the corner and persuades Weebay to let him leave. Namond receives the personal intervention Randy needs. Bunny and his wife take him into their home, and Weebay gives permission despite Delanda's objections. Several adults align at exactly the right moment. Randy's foster mother is hospitalized. Carver lacks legal approval. Social services has no immediate placement. Herc has already damaged his reputation. Every adult failure collects around the same child. When Bunk visits Randy later, the polite and talkative boy from Season 4 has become harder and openly hostile. Randy survives the group home by adjusting to it. The change keeps him safer while destroying the trust that once made another future possible. Namond escapes because the correct adult is able to act. Randy is trapped because the adult who wants to act reaches him too late. Number 2. Dookie asks Prez for money. Dookie begins season 4 as the poorest and most visibly neglected member of the four boys. His clothes are dirty, his home is unstable, and his family sells or takes anything valuable he receives. The other children mock him for smelling bad, although Michael, Randy, and Naaman still include him in their group. Prez becomes one of the first adults to recognize Dookie's intelligence. He gives him clean clothes, food, access to a computer, and attention inside the classroom. Dookie responds quickly because the problem was never a lack of ability. For a while, education gives him a place where being observant and gentle has value. That protection ends when Dookie is moved into high school. Prez knows he is unprepared and tries to delay the transfer, but the school processes him according to age and policy. Once Dookie leaves the classroom, Prez no longer has the same ability to protect him. Dookie begins working on Michael's corner. When Michael has to disappear, Dookie loses that support as well. He eventually joins the Araber who collects scrap metal and uses heroin. Near the end of the series, Dookie returns to Prez and asks for money. He claims he wants to enroll in a program that will help him earn a high school equivalency diploma. Prez understands that the story may be false, but he gives Dookie the money after warning him that he cannot return if he uses it for drugs. Dookie promises him that the program is real. The final montage shows him injecting heroin. This moment ranks above Randy's placement because Dookie reaches the person most likely to help him and has already learned how to make that person part of the addiction. Prez offered clothes, food, education, and respect. Those things improved Dookie's life while he remained inside Prez's classroom. They could not provide housing, family, long-term income, or legal guardianship. Once the school moved Dookie onward, the relationship lost the structure that made it effective. Bubbles proves that addiction is not a permanent ending. He reaches recovery after Sherrod dies from the poisoned heroin Bubbles had prepared for someone else. Bubbles turns himself in, attempts suicide, enters treatment, attends meetings, and spends a long period living in his sister's basement under strict limits. His escape requires more than deciding to stop. Wallace supports him. His sister gives him shelter while refusing to trust him too quickly. Bubbles speaks honestly about Sherrod and accepts that recovery will not remove what happened. By the finale, he is invited upstairs for dinner. Dookie has no equivalent support around him. Prez cares, but their relationship was created through school and cannot easily become something else. Michael once protected him, but Michael is now running from Marlowe's organization. His family has already failed him. The final image of Dookie using heroin is especially cruel because the show has already given us Bubbles' entire journey. We know what may be waiting for Dookie: years of theft, humiliation, violence, illness, and grief before recovery even becomes possible. Bubbles escapes after reaching middle age. Dookie is only beginning the life Bubbles barely survived. Number 1, the final montage replaces everyone. The final montage is the strongest moment of entrapment because it moves beyond one character. It shows Baltimore absorbing every investigation, death, reform, and scandal from the previous seasons before continuing with new people in familiar positions. Carcetti becomes governor. Valchek becomes police commissioner. Rawls moves into the state police. Perlman becomes a judge. Daniels leaves the department and works as a defense attorney. Templeton wins a Pulitzer despite fabricating parts of his reporting. The institutions reward the people who adapted to their demands. On the street, the replacement is even clearer. Michael has become a stick-up man resembling Omar. He carries a shotgun, robs Vincent, and disappears back into the city. Dookie uses heroin, occupying the position Bubbles held at the beginning of the series. Marlowe briefly returns to a corner because legitimate business cannot provide the feeling his name carried on the street. Drug sales continue under new leadership. Sydnor approaches Judge Phelan privately, repeating the kind of move McNulty made at the beginning of the show. The next talented detective has already started stepping outside the chain of command because official routes do not work. The montage does include escapes. Bubbles comes upstairs. Cuddy continues operating his gym. Naaman speaks confidently before an audience. Poot works at a shoe store. Daniels leaves the department without surrendering the standard that cost him his career. Those victories prevent the ending from becoming completely hopeless. They also make the larger pattern harder to dismiss. Cuddy escapes because Avon accepts his departure and later provides money for the gym. Naaman escapes because Bunny and Wee Bay make an unusual agreement around him. Poot escapes because he finally runs and accepts an ordinary job. Bubbles escapes through years of recovery, help from Wallon, and cautious support from his sister. Every one of them needs something beyond personal will. Wallace wanted to leave and received no lasting structure. D'Angelo accepted 20 years rather than remain controlled and was murdered inside prison. Frank tried to save his son and walked into his own death. Bodie understood he was being treated like a pawn, but could not imagine life away from his corner. Randy trusted the police and lost his home. Dookie showed intelligence in the classroom and still ended up using heroin. The final montage confirms that Baltimore does not require any individual person to continue functioning as it does. Remove Avon and Marlowe takes the territory. Kill Omar and Michael picks up the shotgun. Allow Bubbles to recover and Dookie appears beneath the same scrapyard. Push McNulty out and Sidner begins taking similar risks. People leave. Their positions remain available. That is why the montage ranks above every individual death. Wallace's murder can be blamed on Stringer. D'Angelo's can also be blamed on Stringer. Bodie's death comes from Marlowe's rule. Randy's placement follows a chain of specific failures. The final montage removes the comfort of one villain. Marlowe can be arrested. Carcetti can win office. A major crimes unit can build a successful case. A newspaper can expose problems. A teacher can transform a classroom. None of those achievements automatically changes the incentives controlling the institution around them. The police still need favorable statistics. Politicians still make decisions around the next election. Schools still move students forward without preparing them. Newspapers still reward stories that bring prestige. The drug trade still has workers ready to replace anyone arrested or killed. The people who escape deserve credit. Bubbles performs the painful work of recovery. Cuddy admits that he no longer belongs in the game and builds something useful. Poot walks away before the corner takes the rest of his life. Namond accepts the opportunity Bunny gives him. Their survival does not disprove the trap. It explains its conditions. Someone needs to intervene. A safe place has to exist. The person escaping must accept a less familiar identity, and the old world has to release its claim long enough for the new life to become real. If one part is missing, the person often returns, gets pulled back, or simply moves into another version of the same role. My ranking places the final montage first because it gives the clearest answer to whether there is an escape from the world of The Wire. Individuals can escape. Baltimore does not. Bubbles reaches the top of the basement stairs and that victory is real. At the same time, Dookie tightens a belt around his arm. Namond speaks from a stage while Randy learns to survive a group home. Poot sells shoes while Michael raises Omar's shotgun at another dealer. The show allows hope to exist, but it never allows hope to become an easy explanation. For every person who gets out, someone else arrives at the position they left behind. That is the worst part of The Wire's world. It does not need to trap everyone. It only needs to keep the places ready.